Hello, everybody. So happy Q&A Tuesday. Somebody wrote in a question I thought was really sweet. It wasn't even really a full question. The person just said, I am engaging in baffling behavior. Like there wasn't a question mark at the end of it, but they were asking a question. I mean, they were sending it in as a question. People get to do that when they join or when they're inside the free Eating Peace Facebook group. And anyone can write me anytime, grace@workwithgrace.com, to ask a question. So feel free to do that anytime. And I thought I'd share with this one, because obviously, what's implied there, I mean, just showing up is like, wow, I'm looking at what I do here, and it looks absolutely baffling. It looks like this thing is against my own best interests. That happens with anything. Like anytime we're saying this is not a wanted behavior, I don't like it, it is wrong. So in my case, binge eating, overeating, quick snack eating, like sort of, not that any of those things are wrong, or certainly not snacks aren't wrong, but it's looking at how kind of psychosomatic the whole thing was, that it felt emotional and like I wasn't even checking in with my body. And then binge eating looked really baffling. Like, why would somebody be doing that? People have all the different things that come in that we experience as in humanity. Over drinking, even just the movement towards one cigarette, one glass of alcohol. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I know it's just doing whatever it does. But like, what is that when there's a craving and a movement and an effort to go in that direction? Sometimes there's stories that we want, that just seem to repeat themselves over and over again. And it does look baffling. Like I already know that traumatic situation I experienced in the past is over and done with. I'm stable. Things are okay. And yet my mind kind of does a PTSD thing with it and just talks about it over and over again. It just moves into that memory, and we're down the rabbit hole of thinking and thinking and thinking. So maybe even also worth mentioning this one, common is, I mean, I've experienced this and many people have, is when you've got something that's coming in the future, and the way the mind will kind of form lots of ideas about how it needs to look and what you want and what you need to do now, and just where you need to be at, what that's going to be like, and lots of thinking about this thing that you anticipate may or may not be happening in the future. And you could even know, I have no idea how that's going, I'm completely prepared, I'm ready, my bags are packed, and still something almost is keeping you up. You can't even sleep because there's this anticipation running about the future, and it looks baffling. It looks baffling, like something can't be settled. Very repetitive. A number of people over the years, it just makes me think of this right now, have reported having difficult sleeping. Like they're just, one of the main things that they feel really, really focused on, like hyper focused on, is their lack of sleep, the lack of ability to sleep at night. So while there are some things that I sometimes will bring in to the process of becoming more peaceful, becoming more at ease, relaxing, kind of calming down, and what that looks like, that are nutritional sometimes. I think that's important, to look at all the legs of a stool that we might be standing on, what's physical, what's feeling, mental, emotional. Here with the work of Byron Katie, we're really looking at the thought process, our attitude, our mood, our thinking around that. And well, it does get affected by the environment and physical life. I thought we'd look at that today, of just the person mentioning, pain, about baffling behavior. And the very first thing is to simply be incredibly, deeply curious. It looks baffling. What happens when we see that it's baffling? We don't even have to question necessarily if that's true or not. What happens when we look and we think, my God, this behavior is so weird. What is going on? But what happens normally when we think that thought? We feel horrible, ashamed, or I'm going to double down on this situation. I'm going to get my act together. I remember speaking once to a person who had locks on her cabinets to keep herself out of alcohol and food. And there were specific foods. And the key was given to the housemate, And I thought, wow, what a amazing and interesting situation and display of willpower. It's like the Beauty and the Beast, isn't it? I mean, that story is not a mythical story for no reason. It's like, when the sun goes down, I'm going to look like this. Something happens and I look like that, beast-like. Something takes over and it's baffling, and it almost feels magical and overwhelming, and like a spell has been put on me. It doesn't look like I'm in my own best interests at all. And by the way, P.S., I can't stop. I just keep doing it over and over again. So incredible curiosity. We often don't have curiosity. Sometimes the curiosity's there. I remember thinking way long ago, like in my 20s sometime, I know that I wasn't born with this inability to eat in balance. I know I wasn't born with an inability to eat in balance. I know it. Yet something has happened. And I know I lived some of my childhood. When I was a baby, I wasn't obsessed. I know we're not conscious yet. We don't have conscious mind and identity thinking, but still some kind of mechanism was present there that ate and stopped and ate and stopped. Now, every so often, some people will tell me they heard lots of stories about when they were babies and when they were infants and born. And the stories are that they couldn't stop. They would just eat and eat and eat, or cry and cry and cry, and it gets kind of put in the files about what we're thinking about ourselves. I mean, it's just good to notice. It is a story. It is how people are seeing us and then reporting back. But we can't really know. It's like this identity thing of whatever we are. It wasn't there. Memory wasn't present. It's based on other people's observations. But being so incredibly curious, what is that? How can we listen to ourselves and watch what's happening there without the shame coming in, so overwhelming, shame or rage, or the effort to double down and lock all the cabinets? You see, there's so much effort, so much tight-fistedness, and shame is just sick to the stomach. I will never talk about this. I don't want anyone to know this horrible thing. If anyone ever saw me eating the way I eat, I can relate to that. But if I just brought even a little drop of compassion into that, there's a lot of suffering there. I'm looking and I'm saying it's baffling. What if it was possible to understand this in a different way? And that it kind of won't leave me alone until I get something about it. And it might not be as big as I think it is. This thing that I need to get and understand might not be as hard or horrible. And it might be, I don't know. But what if it was possible that I could just really look at what's happening? The mind is so speedy quick. Somebody told me it was like 60,000 thoughts a day, and however many that mean for waking hours. And so all that happens in the moment when when we're living life and the cycle begins, and we're looking like the response to this experience of life is to reach for something to help, reaching for pleasure, reaching for calming down, reaching for numbing. That's really going to help. And just to have some compassion for the self. Like if you have a terrible headache, you want to take some aspirin sometimes, right? Or some Tylenol, Motrin. And that actually does relax the muscles and help bring things along in the physical plane, just like some good solid nutrition will sometimes too, or some medicines. Anyway, just noticing. Of course we'd want to do that. It reduces the shame. But seeing what's happening there, the thinking that's happening, is so powerful. And people will say to me all the time, I can't see it, I can't see it. I'm just overwhelmed with the drive to do the thing I want to do. Watch the screen, log in and see that thing. Start scrolling, go for the food, get the wine, start texting, text the person. Just something that feels obsessive wants to kick in, and it looks like that's the main, overwhelming, extremely loud response to life in this moment. But if we just look a little tiny bit, like 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds. I'm very curious. I will have people that come to the Eating Peace Retreat, give them a little tiny notebook that fits into a bag or the back pocket of your pants that you can take out and write in. And I know we don't always have writing implements, but just to watch, even just to speak it out loud. What are the concepts that are running in the head? And they often have a lot of, fear associated to them. There is a need here that's not getting met. And I need this to happen so I can just get back to solid ground, some kind of solid ground, some sort of stability. But what is the mind saying? And if you just give it 30 seconds only, so I'll say write down 10 thoughts. Just write down 10 thoughts, like that monkey mind chatter, as they say. What is it talking about? What's it saying? People get surprised at what's there, and it can look quite repetitive. Like, oh, I think this all the time. But then you've got a little glimpse into, whether it's I need to calm down, or I'm so angry and upset at this thing and this thing. I'm just seeing the images that are flashing through the mind. And that speedy, busy 60,000 per day, in a span of like 18 hours or something, right? All that's happening in that moment. And it's a speeded, revved up mind too. It's busy talking about the dangers, about what has just happened, or what you're feeling, what you're sensing, what's running here. Dangers, a threat. I don't like it. If I don't do this activity or behavior, this distraction, whatever it is for you, it could be worse. It will be worse. I can't tolerate it. I can't handle it. Then you've got some traction on some thinking. What is it that you can't handle? I mean, don't we want to have the experience of feeling about life like it's possible to handle it? And we don't have to have anything special going on here. Like, we don't have to be a special, strong, powerful person that's, somehow power is dropped in for us. It's just, can I handle it? Because I think just any human being is handling it as we do. without anything added, needing to be added to this moment? Who would I be without my story? Is such an amazing question in the work, that self-inquiry. But even just seeing what is the story here, often it really is a huge, at least it was for me, such a strong sense of not being able to handle strong emotions, thinking that I'm in danger or there's something threatening going on, even just emotionally, kind of psychically, personality wise, rejection from other humans. And really look to what you're looking at with other humans is the very first place to look. What is my relationship to people in this situation? What am I nervous about? What am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? I know that can be such a huge question, but to be radically, deeply, wildly curious about this is a different perspective or point of view. And just saying, I don't even have to have the answer immediately. No demands on the self. What if nothing was required? Nothing's actually missing here, except for me thinking something's missing. So what if I have all that's available and needed to see something differently, to see this experience differently? I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know how that's going to happen. I just know if I relax just a little bit and bring a little bit of curiosity in, I'm more open to that than not. I just remember thinking a long time ago, and again, it's the same thing of where I didn't really have a moment that I can remember and tell you about specifically. But I remember having an idea. Remember, like that I told you, I mentioned earlier, I know I was not born with something missing around food and eating and hunger and fullness. I know that's present. I know what it feels like to be full. I know what it feels like to be hungry too. If I just didn't have lots of thinking on it like an animal, I know I have that within that is just sensing like an animal, like something that's natural and living in this world, human being. That's in here somewhere. It's just that there's lots and lots of thoughts piled on top that cover that over and make that less important. And what are those thoughts? And I would just, I could really see there's a lot of thoughts that felt very emotional, very frightening. If you have nowhere else to go, just what is the threat? Something feels threatening about just life itself, especially in this moment. Something feels kind of empty, and maybe my overall perspective, the general mood is I'm kind of in danger. And I know I'm not thinking that every moment. If I was thinking that all the time, I wouldn't ever go to sleep at all, but I do go to sleep. But what is it? I just remember feeling so much fear in a way, and then just being so curious about that element of fear. So incredibly curious. What is that thing? If I didn't know it was labeled fear, what is this thing? What are all the thoughts? What's it talking about? What does it want to say? Why am I so hyper interested in safety? And what if that's just the mind doing a mind's work, which is all about survival? It's great that brain is running and talking about success and failure and uh, being okay, making sure that I'm just the right temperature and at ease and comfortable and not threatened and living as long of a life as possible. I know it seems like that's what my mind would want to do, live as long of a life as possible. Likes being alive. But if I don't have to listen only to the mind, So I'm very, very curious about whatever the mind is saying and noticing how incredibly powerful and strong and loud and busy it can be. And who would I be without my story? Without my story. Very curious about that. What if I didn't think it in the moment? What if I didn't think this moment is super empty? This is very hopeless. I should be doing something else. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I suggest, what if you just simply did nothing for 5 minutes and simply listened? Just listen, and you notice all those thoughts screaming and yelling and talking and suggesting and regretting and shaming. They all have different feels and play, but they're just thoughts, just getting churned out. And what if I did nothing? Maybe 5 minutes is even too long. Like, what if I did nothing for 2 minutes? I just would love noticing that, yes, it looks like really storming, overwhelming cravings coming up. And once the thought is latched onto that I need to do the behavior, my thing that I do that looks baffling, but I just have to do it. It looks baffling. It looks like it's for no reason or not in my own best interests or against me, but I have to do it. And it's to trust. I have to do it for very good reasons that the mind is talking about. My mind is talking about why I need to do this. And the mind isn't wrong. Don't have to hate the mind, but it's not also right. It's not saying everything about life that's the truth. It might be missing something. It might be basing its assumptions on the past, on some incidents and some experiences, or the future and what it anticipates will happen. Just some assumptions that might be false. I would just see every time almost that there was off balance behavior of any kind, there's some kind of assumptions and thoughts that are running that are actually lies for me. For me. They're not lies in the overall great scheme of things, as if there are truths and there are lies. It's just for me. They weren't really true. So amazing to question those perceptions and just see what's happening. You really got to see what's happening. I just would notice I was so frightened. And as I began to see what I was scared of in these moments of churning emotion, I would look. And I didn't have to look right in the moment when the overwhelming cravings were happening and I was moving into the behavior. I could look after. That's what's incredible about the mind. I could look and see, what was I really afraid of back there before my mind went into, okay, shutdown mode. That's enough. Let's go do the thing. I can look and see, what was going on. That's what's incredible about the mind. You can do it when you're not quite as afraid. It's sort of like emergency preparedness work when people, first aid emergency workers practice, and there's a, rubber sized human, and they all know it's not a real human, and they're rushing and running. They go through the practice mode. They know it's not a real situation. You can do that with your own mind. That's what's incredible about the mind. So just to have such deep curiosity, because when we come in with that shame and self-hatred and anger and fury and resistance and frustration and despair about whatever it was that's getting repeated that looks baffling, that just blocks off curiosity like nobody's business. So, it's just simply noticing that. It likes a cloud. It's like clouds descending that look so foggy and dark. Have you ever been in fog where you can't even see, 5 feet in front of you? It becomes to look like that, starts to look like that when There's a lot of despair and disgust and shame about whatever it is you're doing. And that's all right that that's all there, because it's very normal for that to be there. But the more I was willing to have that come out in the open, the more the fog kind of lifted from that. And then I could see more, what is it that I'm thinking? Because ultimately, what do we want? We want to not have the interest in this baffling behavior. I want to become not interested. Like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to want to do that, and it just never appears. That's how I feel now. It never occurs to me that a cigarette would be great. It never occurs to me that overeating would be a great idea. It just doesn't even come to mind. Isn't that what we want? That kind of ease and freedom. And that it seems like that can only happen if I'm super curious and I understand and become peaceful, find the peace about whatever it is that's happening around this before, during, and after the behavior runs, like how my mind is seeing life itself. So I think, we all have the power to be super, super curious about this, radically, intensely, inexplicably curious about this thing without having, wanting it to be shut down, be the first thing on the menu, the first thing that needs to happen. This thing needs to shut down. Just to say, I really want to understand. I want to understand it. I want to befriend it and make some sense of it and feel like I get what it's been here for. Trust that it's been visiting for very important reasons, and it's part of something natural. It's a natural process that's, even offered up by nature itself, by something that looks very mysterious. It's trying to help move us wherever we need to get moved to survive. So, in the most simple way, just being extremely curious and being willing to identify 10 thoughts, either before or during. That's a hard time to do during behavior, but just to consider during, when you're in the middle of a, sort of compulsive, usually you're just kind of wildly circling way outside of a lot of things that are conscious right in the moment, and that's okay. Something needs to be have unhooked, put it that way. But something is also watching the whole time and seeing everything that's going on. We always remember, you remember a lot that's happening, depending on the situation. We also don't see a lot. And then what's happening after, and you just find where you can. What could be going on here? What feels like I'm resisting? And the great question is, what am I afraid of about life? What am I afraid of about life? In life? What causes fear for me? That's an amazing and big place to start. What has caused fear for me in my life? But just even seeing in those moments when I feel the urge coming on, or after I've gone through the behavior and I'm looking, I wonder what I was afraid of there. And that's just the mind talking. So knowing that there's this stable, balanced place where my feet are standing and resting on, like the ground, that is always present there. Even if it looks like, my head went spinning into orbit, my feet are solidly on the ground. And that's always present there too. It's really nice to know. It's never completely disconnected. So who am I without my story is that. Let's see how it goes. Let me know how it goes. Just being willing to write down or speak out loud, identify what I'm afraid of, what I'm thinking around this behavior process that looks so baffling, bringing curiosity to that experience. All right. Lots of love.